Hey family, Amat's here with you again. I wanted to just take this opportunity to come in and to speak about some things that, or something rather, that is very important. And that is the ongoing contamination of food, particularly in the U.S., Canada as well, but we're going to focus on the U.S. With respect to foods being contaminated with listeria, salmonella, E. coli, and many other things. And we want to touch on why this is so and why it's important for us to understand how we carry ourselves even in the captivity until the time, and though we're now in our exodus, but we need to pay attention. We want to look at, let's quickly look at scripture here in Jeremiah 29:4-6. Thus says Yahuwah of hosts, Elohim of Yasharal, to all the exiles whom I have exiled, from Yerushalayim to Babel, build houses and dwell in them, plant gardens and eat their fruit. So Yah is giving an instruction here. I'm going to be exiling you into Babel. And we are once again in Babel. But it gives us an instruction. Plant gardens and eat their fruit. Eat, in other words, eat what we grow and grow what we eat the best that we can. And this is important, that we don't defile ourselves, that we don't fall into illness, because it tells us that the ways of the nations about us are unclean. Yeah? So we're going to look at some stuff, but before that, let's look at another scripture which many of us, I'm sure, are very familiar with. And that is in Daniel. And we know this story very well, when Daniel and the others are taken away captive. And it's in Daniel 1 verse 8. It says, but Daniel laid upon his heart that he would not defile himself with a portion of the sovereign's food, nor with the wine he drank. Why was this important? Because Daniel and the others were aware that the sovereign's table in Babel would be defiled with foods that are unclean, that were not good for them to consume, that would defile them, that would also make them very ill. So made a choice that they would eat certain other things that they probably at that time realized would not be defiling unto them, or they would at least be able to have some control over, even though they were going to be imprisoned or in captivity. And it's very important that these things are instructional to us, but it's also important that we are aware of what is going on around us. So we're going to look at a couple of videos and I will come right back to you. Okay.
A massive federal meat recall continues to grow tonight over fears of listeria contamination. And Chris, this recall covers hundreds of chicken products found in stores all across the country.
That's right, Dawn. Nearly 10 million pounds of pre-cooked chicken is said to be affected by this recall, and it's sold in some of the biggest stores in the country, including Walmart, Target, and Amazon. Customers are being told if you have any of these products, throw them away or return for a refund. Tonight, retailers across the country are scrambling to take recalled chicken products off of store shelves. Hundreds of popular items like fettuccine alfredo from Walmart, chicken salad from Trader Joe's, a Chipotle chicken bowl from Target. Just a fraction of the items being recalled because of the potential of listeria contamination.
Maybe they ate it within the last day or so. If they did, you watch them and make sure that they are not developing fever, diarrhea, nausea.
Bruce Pack, the Oregon-based meat and poultry processor, initiated the recall, affecting hundreds of pre-made chicken products sold at stores like Walmart, Trader Joe's, Aldi, and Target. It's the same recall that forced Philadelphia Public Schools to warn students about possible illness last week.
Not a good feeling.
Leery shoppers are being told some of the affected products may still remain on store shelves.
It makes me concerned. I feel like the things that I buy from the shelf should be safe.
But seeing things in refrigerators that I don't really know, like my grandparents could be eating it and I don't know. So that really does cause like a big problem.
And throw it out, because I don't have time to be trying to take it back to the store.
Although no deaths or illnesses have been linked to the recall, the elderly and immunocompromised could be most at risk. Dr. Mike says prevention starts way down the food chain.
What we need to do is to get better control and better regulations involved in production of food so this sort of thing doesn't happen.
Now, we have uploaded a complete list of all the affected recalled items on fox29.com. And if you have one of these products, you are told to simply throw it away or return it to the store for a full refund. But Dawn and Jason, the most important thing, if you had one of these products and you feel sick, make sure you see a doctor.
No doubt. All right, Chris O'Connell, thank you very much on the Listeria recall.
Today's Health Watch and another big food recall tied to Listeria. More than 600 frozen waffle products from more than a dozen brands are being voluntarily recalled due to a potential Listeria contamination. Now, this bacteria was detected through routine testing at a manufacturing facility. So far, we're happy to say there have been no confirmed reports of illnesses or deaths. The products are sold at big retailers like Target and Walmart. You've been there. We reached out to the potentially affected retailers for comment. Walmart responded saying this: "We have placed a sales restriction on the products and removed them from our impacted stores and clubs." CBS News medical contributor Dr. Celine Gounder, editor-at-large for public health at KFF Health News, joins us now to discuss. Good to see you, Dr. Celine.
Good to see you.
It just seems like there are more and more Listeria recalls. Number one, I keep thinking Wisteria like the flower. It's nothing at all like that. But it does seem to be a lot of Listeria recalls lately. Why is that?
Well, we have more and more complicated food supply chains. So at every step of food processing, there's the opportunity for contamination. So that's number one.
Okay.
Consumers want ready-to-eat food, so of course they're more processed as a result. And thirdly, we have better tests. So it used to be we might not have been aware or known what made you sick. Now we can actually test, detect, and tell you what made you sick.
Now, if I were sitting in front of a nicely toasted
Waffle.
Eggo right here, waffle with a little butter melted and some syrup on it.
Oh, the syrup, yeah.
It'd be hard to say no, but help me say no. What are the risks here if you're in that category where this could be a contaminated product?
Well, so you can develop quite severe disease, including meningitis, which is when it's in your spinal cord, or sepsis, where the Listeria gets into your bloodstream and can cause damage to your organs. The symptoms that you want to look out for would be headaches, fevers, changes in your mental status, difficulty walking, seizures even. So this can be causing you a very severe disease if you're in one of the high-risk groups.
How does it even get into frozen products to begin with?
Well, so first of all, freezing does not kill bacteria like Listeria. It's a very hardy bacteria.
Okay, what about heating it up?
Well, heating can. So you need to be cooking things at a high enough temperature.
Got you.
But because you can get cross-contamination, it could be from other foods, it could be equipment or surfaces that were contaminated. We find Listeria in the soil and water, so there are a lot of different ways it could get into a frozen waffle.
How does it spread?
So through food is the most common way. And some of the foods that we consider high risk and why we tell pregnant women, for example, not to eat them are deli meats and soft cheeses. So foods are very high risk. Those foods are very high risk for contamination.
Gotcha.
Sometimes it's, again, a surface or equipment that's also contaminated.
I said Eggo by default because that's my home waffle, but that's actually not on the list. But if people think they might have
The
a
Eggo
product,
people are going,
yeah,
hey!
I was thinking that in my brain. I was just for the record. That's what I eat at home,
Yes,
and so
yes,
it came
yes.
to mind.
Wait a
but
minute.
That's not on the list.
Let go my Eggo, Tony.
Exactly right. But if people do have one of the products listed, what should they do?
They really should throw them away. This is not worth the risk. This can be deadly. And so really just dispose of anything that is on that recall list.
All right, and to emphasize one more time, Eggo, because I think Lego Eggo too.
Yeah.
It is not on the list. Dr. Celine Gounder, thank you so much. For the full list of potentially affected products and brands, visit the FDA website.
CDC officials say some McDonald's quarter pounders could be making people sick with E. coli. At least 49 cases in 10 states have been traced back to the burgers, and sadly, tragically, one person has died from the infection. I want to bring in CBS News correspondent Nancy Chen, who's joining me here in Studio 55 to talk more about this. So the outbreak occurred a couple of days ago. How is McDonald's responding, Nancy?
Well, at this point, most of the people, Vlad, who have reported getting sick have said that they've had the quarter pounder, which is why it's the focus of this investigation right now. And the majority of these cases have been in Colorado and Nebraska. Now, some of the other states where this was reported, though, include Iowa, Kansas, Missouri, Oregon, and Wisconsin. And as you mentioned, this all started from the end of September, with the most recent case October 11th. McDonald's says it has pulled the burger from menus in impacted locations, as well as portions of surrounding areas, and that it has linked a subset of cases to slivered onions sourced from a single supplier, which serves three distribution 3 distribution centers, I should say. Still, the investigation continues to confirm exactly where this is coming from. The company says that they are working with their suppliers to replenish their supply for the quarter pounder in the coming weeks. And in the meantime, all other menu items, they say, including other beef products like the hamburger, the cheeseburger, the Big Mac, they remain unaffected and available, Vlad.
So E. coli is no joke. What kind of symptoms did customers say they experienced?
Yeah, it usually takes 3 to 4 weeks to determine if someone is sick as part of an outbreak. It takes it takes a little while. It's not an immediate reaction. Most people infected with E. coli experience severe stomach cramps, diarrhea, and vomiting. Now, most do recover without treatment after 5 to 7 days, but it can be especially dangerous for people with weakened immune systems. So this is definitely something to keep an eye on.
It's a credit to the CDC that they're actually able to trace those symptoms back to these burgers because, as you say, 3 weeks, you've eaten a lot of things in the 3 weeks since you consumed the infected meat or the infected product, and to be able to trace it back to McDonald's, that sort of gives me a little bit of, makes me feel a little better about how people are thinking about this stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions being asked, and for good reason.
And how it got into that McDonald's, those McDonald's hamburgers.
Yeah, so as they discuss these issues, we see that they gloss over with a very quick brush what is going on. They make it seem as if these things are just, something that's transitory and really not that important. But what they fail to do is to really give valuable information about what the causes are and what exactly is happening. And if we look at this, what is happening, we see that this is becoming more pervasive and more numerous. And so with that, we're just going to take a look at where some of these things originate. What are they exactly? So let's first take a look at salmonella. We see that this is a bacteria that is found in the intestinal tract of pigs, chickens, birds, reptiles. Now, supposedly, they tell you that a person can get salmonella from eating raw fruits and vegetables. How can this be? And the only way that this can happen is for that fruit or vegetable to be contaminated with these things in some way other than it being naturally present. Salmonella is not naturally found in plants, trees, bushes, fruits, or vegetables. And so in order for it to find its way there, it has to be contaminated by these things either externally or it has to be contaminated by them internally. And how would they be contaminated by things such as salmonella, E. coli, or listeria internally? It means that somewhere, excuse me, my voice is quite raspy today, that somewhere in the growing process, these things are introduced. Either it's by waste, either it's by something that's used to aid in the growth as a fertilizer, or it's in the handling. But the handling, of course, would happen during harvesting or during processing in a plant by workers. Maybe someone doesn't have good hygiene, but you wouldn't have such a wide recall of products. But let's look at something that's quite shocking. Pig waste, right? Most people don't know that pig waste is widely used as manure in the U.S. And shockingly, it's also widely used in organic farming. Yes, the feces of pigs are processed, sometimes even processed by those that have the farms themselves in a way that's used as a fertilizer in crops. Now, as people of the Most High, we know what is unclean to us, what we should not consume, and what we should not deal with. And we know that the meat of the pig, as well as the waste of the pig, is one of them. Let's take a look.
Another recall alert. Eagle Produce is recalling more than 220 cases of whole cantaloupe. The company says they found salmonella contamination in the fruit. The contaminated products have a red and white sticker with the word candy spelled with a K and the number 4050 on them. So far, no illnesses are being reported. Consumers should not eat that cantaloupe and are urged to throw it away.
Yeah, so family, I wanted to ask the question, and I hope you all can answer me in the comment section. Why is it are we not to think, those of us that have are awake and have turned back to Yahuwah, considering what our forefathers has done to cast us off into this captivity, is that why should we not believe and know that the wicked one, and i.e. our enemies, will seek to defile us in every single way possible? I always say that the best way to defile the Most High's people in this time is by what we put into our bodies, because we know that our bodies is the habitation of the Spirit of the Most High. But, you know, the Most High speaks to and warns us about these things. So we see here the pig, the swine, which we are not supposed to eat, and it is used in so many ways, in so many things. And so let's take a look at something really quickly so we can get an idea. You know, but before that, you know, I just wanted to say that the swine, the pig, is one of the most disgusting and the most unclean of all the animals that the Most High has instructed us not to consume or not to do anything with. Yes, it is one of the most disgusting of creatures. What most people may not know is that a pig will eat you. It will stalk you, it will kill you, it will eat you. It eats anything that dies. It will eat its own offspring. It will kill another sow and eat it. It will eat anything, dead or alive. And so it's just a harbinger of disease and infection. And yet this is something that we feel that we should consume. And it is something that those who control the food supply find that it's okay to use, because the desire is to defile us, to fertilize food, to fertilize the soil, whether it's be fruits, whatever, or even to mix and feed in some ways, to feed to other animals. So let's take a look at something. So what you're looking at here next, family, is large bags of human waste. And one of the astonishing things is that for the past 30 to 40 years in Canada and in the US, human waste has been used and distributed to farmers to use as fertilizer on crops. This has been okayed by the U.S. Department of Agriculture and all the other such bodies that overlook and see these types of things. And so I want you to imagine and really just, you know, think about the fact that when they tell you that food is contaminated with E. coli, the main place where E. coli is found is in human waste. Yes, it can be found in some other animals that, you know, for example, like the swine and other such unclean animals, but it's mostly found in human waste. So aren't we, you know, it wouldn't be surprising for us to see that fruits and vegetables are contaminated with E. coli. Why? Because whatever is fertilized, used to fertilize the soil, it's the uptake is going to happen into whatever is growing in that soil. And then by extension, that uptake is going to be going into whomever is eating it. And it's really fortunate that more people aren't dying or infected each day or each month because of this disgusting practice. So we need to realize that we cannot be so separated from what we eat and have no concern about what's going on with our food. We just believe what our enemy says. We're disconnected from how the food is produced and packaged and what is done with it. And many laws have been passed over the past few years that a lot of these food makers don't even have to tell you. Even if something is genetically modified, GMO, or what is happening with it, you can load up an app to your phone, and if you're so desire, you can scan a barcode on something that you're buying that will give you the information. But they know that most people aren't going to do that. So, you know, that's the end of it. And so we see all this increased contamination of food. And why is it? Because we're seeing an increased use of these things more and more in the way that foods are grown, what animals are fed, and so that's transferred into the food that we eat, how the food is handled. People that are, you know, not probably having the best hygienic practices that are handling the food. Corporate food production it's a very ugly, very unclean, and really not really managed and regulated very well. The regulation is left into the hands of the companies of which are looking for profit. But we also need to realize that everything is about us. The ways and the practices of quote-unquote the other nations are already innately unclean. It is something that is just natural to them. They don't think twice about it. So therefore, you know, how they produce food, what they do with it, and all of that isn't taking anything into consideration as to what should be done and how it should be processed. I mean, imagine, I want you to visualize, you go to the toilet basically to relieve yourself, and even in scripture we see the Most High tells us even what is supposed to happen with that in Leviticus about, in Wayikra, about what should happen even with our waste, because it's considered so unclean, right? And so here we are, we believe that this stuff is going to be disposed of the way it should be. But of course, you know, in these nations, nothing goes to waste. Everything is for sale. And so, what are we to do? Well, what I can say is for those of you that are listening, the best that you can until this time is to take control of what you eat and how you know, be very diligent in how your food is prepared, grown. But I will say the bright spot is that, you know, for those of us that are walking before the Most High in His statutes, His commandments, our exit from these places are imminent. Our exodus is here. So prepare yourself and do what you have to do for the sake of your families and for your children, for your health, for your well-being, that you do not defile yourself, that you do not cause great disease, because it's our responsibility. And again, the template is laid out for us even again with Daniel and what he had to say before the king and to the king, that he would not eat of the sovereign's table, because he knew that this food was going to be unclean, dealt with in ways that were unclean, that would defile him and his brothers. And, you know, once defiled in that way, if we exercise ignorance is one thing. But we need to realize that there is a consequence for ignorance. And it's a price that we should not be willing to pay. We cannot accept and should not just be so complacent that we're not being spiritually, we can't be spiritually lazy, right? We cannot, the Most High tells us that the ways of the other nations are unclean, that we should not adopt their ways. Everything they do is unclean. they they do not adhere to the things of the Most High, because He has set Himself over us, not over them. They are going to be who they are. They're going to be as their Father, doing everything that is opposite to the things of the Most High. So, you know, we see that in some places out in the West, places like Texas and Oklahoma and some of these places, even just kind of switching gears a little bit. You know, they will tell you that, yes, you know, you can find some of these things like the salmonella and listeria and stuff like that in the gut of cows. Well, not necessarily the case naturally. But we'll see that in some of these places, the animals are being fed everything from Skittles candy to M&Ms to Mars candy bars crushed up with all other types of things that an animal should not be eating, right? Because again, nothing goes to waste. Everything must be sold for a profit. And so they believe that, you know, just give the animals anything to eat. That food is then processed, it's packaged, and it's, you know, these animals rather are slaughtered, it's packaged, and it's sold. And, you know, they tell you a lie sometimes that, you know, that these animals are fed this or fed that. And it's kind of laughable, because when you think that there's even a distinction where they say, oh, an animal is grass-fed, such as a cow is grass-fed, you have to scratch your head and ask yourself, well, shouldn't it be that what else should a cow or goat or sheep be eating except something that is grass-fed? And so that in itself is giving you a message that there are other things that are being fed to the animals. Animals are being fed grain that is ground up with the body parts and meats and bones of other animals, being fed to animals like cows and stuff that don't eat that. So the only thing you're going to have is infection and things being in the gut and in the meat of these animals that are not supposed to be there. So I just want to say that, you know, we just need to be before the Most High. We need to be diligent. We need to be awake. We need to be aware of what is happening. You know, and so the next segment, I'm going to really individualize some things and break down some things for us with animals, see what they're fed, and and look at some of have a relook at animals that are unclean, so we understand what we should be doing and what we should not be doing, and that regardless of anywhere we are. Even as the Most High gathers us and returns us to His lands, there are things that have to be done, because the heathen are there, and until they are removed, we also have to. We'll have a greater ability to really be able to know what we're eating, and how it's dealt with according to the words of the Most High. So until next time, see you on the next one. Praise Yah, praise Yahuwah, praise Abba, and be diligent and be prayed up.